It is my pleasure to share with you the really big why this afternoon. The man whose goal it is to transform teams and organizations and ultimately change the world of work. Please join me in welcoming Patrick Lencioni.
All right. Wow, you know, every comedian, every performer, every lecturer, I'm really excited to be here. And where am I? Cleveland? You know what I mean? But I'm really excited to be here today. That's not just a throwaway line. In fact, I'm a little bit nervous, which isn't normal for me when I speak, because this is a big deal. This is such a special thing for me, and I'm so excited to be here. Now, I should tell you, though, that my speaking style is not a typical speaker. And it's because of my Myers-Briggs personality style. How many people have ever done the Myers-Briggs or know what that is, Myers-Briggs? So I'm what's called an ENFP in the Myers-Briggs. And there's probably some ENFPs in the room. And if you don't know what an ENFP is, there's a prayer that goes with every Myers-Briggs type. And the prayer of the ENFP goes like this: Dear Lord, help me to focus more on what I need, oh look, a bird, on what I need to do today, and I get easily distracted and I forget what I was gonna say, and that's gonna happen today, because I know that I've looked at the room and I know that Enlo is right there and Bill is back there and Chico State is up here and all that. I'm trying to remember, and the long-term recovery people are here, and I'm gonna be so distracted by all the great companies, and Lulu's is back there, and I'm thinking about all that, and Professor Guzzi's class is up there, is that right? Are you students here? Yeah, they're right. And so I'm already distracted, and oh, look, a bird. And so you're just going to have to help me by interrupting me a lot. It really helps me to be interrupted. And so if you have a question about what I'm presenting, it's something that doesn't make sense or something that you want some more explanation of, just raise your hand, and you can come up to the microphone or ask it from where you are, and I'll repeat it. I like that. In fact, the first 5 or 6 questions are going to get a free book, not the one you're already going to get free, but a different one. But it has to be a real question. It can't be like, what's your middle name? You know, that's not going to get you a book. It has to be about the material. The other thing I want to confess, this is all part of a confession, which makes sense because I'm Catholic. The other thing I need to confess is that everything I'm going to cover today is really simple. You know, it's really simple. And I'm not a rocket scientist. I'm not particularly smart. And what I'm going to cover with you are things you already know. And I'm okay with that because Samuel Johnson was a writer, if you don't know who he was, in the 18th century, and he had a great quote, and he said, people need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed. I love that quote. People need to be reminded more than they need to be instructed. And all I'm here to do is remind you of things you already know, but in a way that hopefully you'll be able to remember and put into practice, and by so doing that, changing the whole community, okay? So that's why I'm here, and that's what I'm a little nervous about, because this event might be the most meaningful thing I've ever done in my career. I was thinking about it backstage. I was thinking about that. I've spoken at the what do you call that, Rockefeller Center, and I've been on stage with a few, and on dockets with presidents and other people, and I've spoken to 9,000 people a couple times, and 100,000 on satellite, and I was pretty nervous. But what we're here to do is closer to my heart than I think just about anything I've done. And that's why I'm a bit nervous about it. And you'll see as we go through this. But I really want this next, 90 minutes. The kids up there are like, oh, geez, 90 minutes. But I really want this 90 minutes to be something that you remember and put into practice. And because I would love to know that 5 years from now, people's lives will have changed as a result of this. We'll talk about how that might work in just a few minutes. But this book that we're talking about today, which was originally titled The 3 Signs of a Miserable Job, we had to retitle it because people said, we like the book, but we can't take it to work. And so we retitled it The Truth About Employee Engagement, right? And this book was something that I think it's my favorite book in many ways, because it started, we'll talk about this in a few minutes, when I was a kid. So we had this book, we said, we really want to bring this book to people because we think it can make a difference. As Weldon said, we want to change the way work is done. We want people to love their jobs, to be fulfilled, to get a lot done, and be really improved by them. And we said, how are we going to do that? We should go to a company and take all their managers through it. And we said, there's a lot of companies. Wouldn't it be even better to do it with a community? And we were sitting in this little office that we call the library at my office in Lafayette, California. And we said, what would be the best place to do it would be Chico and Butte County. Because we'd been up here before, as Llewellyn said. And then between the first time we came and the second time, there was the fires. And we said, first of all, it's such a tight-knit community and such a wonderful place. Secondly, they're going through such a hard thing that's affecting everybody. And we thought that would be the kind of place that if we could go bring together a lot of managers from all the companies in the communities, that could have a fundamental impact on that community sometime. And so we called Weldon, we talked to Angela and Chris, and Angela and Chris actually cried when we were telling them. They were in the car, we're like, are you guys okay? And they said, we're actually weeping right now, because they thought this would be the greatest thing. So this has been their life's work for 6 months pulling this together, and I want to thank you guys, Weldon, Chris, and Angela for that. Thank you so much. So that's why we're here. Ooh, I got it right. And this is what I want to be true. I really want this to be true 5 years from now. I want to see this written, that there's not a better place to work in America than here. And you know why? Because managers in this community know how to manage people. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because it really comes down to managers. And now, here's the thing. I live in the Bay Area, not that close to, but across the bay from the Silicon Valley. That's not the best place to work in America. There's a crap load of jobs there. That's the technical term, crap load. And you might be able to make a lot of money there, but it's not a wonderful place to be, because people get churned through and there's all these things. The key to life in work is being managed well and led well and feeling part of where you are and wanting to go to work every morning and loving that experience. And what I want to do today is provoke a movement in this area that's going to make this true one day. And I don't say that lightly. This sounds silly, like, oh yeah, that. No, I really mean that. If an entire community of people at Chico Electric and everywhere else in this community can look at the way they manage, and the entire area can change that. You're going to notice this when you go to the grocery store. People that come to school here are going to notice it. People that go to elementary school, their parents are going to notice it. Everybody who works here or does anything in this area are going to say, what is going on in Chico and Butte County? And it's that they know how to manage. Now, the truth, there's a lot of people here that know how to manage well. So all we're going to do is kind of align you and talk about how you can do this going forward. And we're going to leave you with some very practical things we want you to do. So that's why we decided to come up here, because we want this to be true in 3 years, 5 years. Now, I want to tell you, this is me and my dad, God rest his soul, when I was a little kid. The reason why I show this, there's a few reasons. First of all, I'm going to talk about my dad later, because he's the reason that I kind of got into this field and wrote this book. I think that's why it's so special to me, because it was provoked by my dad. But the other reason is that when I was that kid, that 5-year-old in Bakersfield, California, the other end of the valley, I realize now that my dad's work had a profound impact on me and my family, on his self-esteem, and on our neighborhood. And at the time, I didn't understand what that meant. But I can tell you this. I can remember Sandy Sanford and Jim Sadler and Danny Donati were my dad's managers over 40 years at this company. I remember their names. I remember what they looked like. I remember how they treated my dad. I remember how that made him feel and how it affected our family. Okay? And it wasn't always good. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. And if you were to go back and talk to those people, in fact, this event is provoking me to write a new book. I have a book that's coming out, and then the next book I write is going to be called The Heroic Manager, because what I realize now is the way they managed my dad, they were either going to be heroes to him and to my family, or they were going to make our lives harder. And I look back at my dad's life and how so much of how he felt had to do with how people in his company treated him. And that's something I want to impress upon everybody here, is that we all, whether we're students and we're thinking about becoming leaders and employees someday, God bless you, or whether we're currently managing people or we're an employee, the way we have a relationship with our manager has a profound impact on our children, our spouses, our neighbors, and our extended family and our community. So that's why and I'm going to talk about my dad, because that's how it provoked me to do all this. Okay, so what are we going to do next? I really don't know, because I'm an ENFP. Hey, Amy, can we go to the next slide? Okay, so before we move forward, I want to stop and have everybody do this. I want you to ask yourself the question, and I want you to turn to the person on your left and tell them this. Of course, that makes no sense because then nobody's going to be looking at each other because we're all going to be looking over there. So I want you to turn to the person on your right and your left at some point. This will be a little messy here. And just tell them which of these you are. Are you a manager? Do you manage people? You could be the CEO, you could be a line manager, whatever it is. Are you not yet a manager? You're just an employee, which is great. Are you a practitioner? Are you the kind of person that works in an organization that influences others and teaches them how to do it? Or are you a future employer manager, which might be some of the people sitting up in the balcony, the students from Cal State. So what I'd like you to do is take 3 minutes to have this conversation and just talk about where you fit into this whole thing, okay? All right. I hate to interrupt people when they're having a good time. But let's just take a look at who's here today. So how many people here are managers? Raise your hand if you manage other people. That's a lot. That's amazing. How many people are not yet managers? You're employees. All right, very good. And most of the managers, you're managers and employees, you know. How many people are practitioners? Oh, quite a few. That's great. These are like organizational people, HR people, consultants, all that. How many people are yet to be managers or employees? Students, for instance. Got a whole classroom right up there. Okay, great. And you too. All right. How did you get down here? Get back up there. You're supposed to. No, I'm just teasing. Okay, so that's what we have here. This is a great mix. Now let's take a look at who's here. Now we looked at some of our sponsors. We put together a list of organizations that are here, which is really quickly. And this is an extremely partial list. There's 170 companies here. I mean, it would be tough to find an organization from this area, you know. And like, I don't know, like, is the Rice Cooperative is not on there? I know they're not on here. I know that the cheese company, where's our cheese makers? Ramiro, they're not on there. I mean, there are so many different companies that are on here that in this area. And for those that aren't on here, we're sorry. Is Carrier Farms on here? Yeah, they're on here. I know they're here. We're excited about you. I mean, and that's what's amazing about this is we've got banks, we've got schools, we've got tech businesses, we've got every kind of organization possible because the stuff we're going to talk about today applies no matter where you work. It applies in churches. We've got great churches here. And of course, we've got the long-term recovery folks that are here. So that's why you got down here, because you're a student that works there. Okay, you could stay. That sounds good. So now that we know who's here, let's get started. So let me tell you how this whole thing came about. When I was a kid, about 5 years older than I was in that picture, I was probably 9 or 10. We moved to a different house, I remember, from that one. And my dad would come home from work every day, and I would run to the door to meet him, which is an awesome thing now that I'm a dad. I love when now only the dog runs now. I'm like, my kids were a little older. But I would run to meet him, but there was always something a little bit defeated about him. You know, he was tired, and he was really good at his job. He was in sales, and my dad was great. Richard was a great salesperson, and he liked what he did, but going to work would drive him crazy. And he would come home, and he'd be kind of defeated, and I started hearing about him complaining about this thing called management. Now, I didn't know what that was, but I wasn't too happy about it because I thought it drove my dad kind of crazy. And I said, I love my dad, and I didn't want him to feel that way. And I thought, there's something wrong here. And one day, do I have to get one of these job things one day? I thought so, yeah, and I'm going to have to do that too. This seems kind of crazy that my dad spends more than a third of his waking hours at work. More time at work than anything else, more than sleeping, more than home with his family. And yet, he was coming home frustrated. And I thought, this just doesn't seem right. This just doesn't seem right. So, but I wasn't like Alex P. Keaton, remember in that show, what was that, where he had the little briefcase in his suit, and I was like, I'm gonna go fix this and be a consultant. I was just a little kid, I didn't know. But there was a seed planted in me at that age. And so a couple years later, I was at the barber shop, which was at the car wash, which can tell you something about the kind of haircuts I probably got as a kid. And can you imagine, like, do you want the special wax? Okay, do you want to cut the kid's hair? Yeah, we could do that too, you know. So I was in the car wash barber shop, and one of the barbers said, hey kid, you want to make $20 this weekend? I said, yeah. He goes, get some of your friends together, have your dad drive us out. And so we did that, and we got in the back of my dad's pickup, and we drove out from Bakersfield. So we drove out into the oil fields down below the bluffs. And it was summer, so it was like probably 105 or so. And we get out there, and we're out in the middle of these fields, and they say, okay, go down there, and they get us in these little foxholes, and they go, okay, go. And we scramble out there, and we push these targets of pigs and other animals up, metal targets. We'd lean them up and stand them up, and they go, 5 seconds. And we'd run, and we'd dive in the foxhole. They go, fire. And pew, bullets were flying over our head. It was a shooting range, and we were the target people. And that's the day I decided I was going to college. And then the next year, at age 13, back then employment laws weren't so, I became a busboy and a barback. I worked in a bar until 1:15 in the morning. I was 13. I was like, I don't think that works. And then I was a bank teller when I was in college. So I had other jobs too. And so I started learning about what work was like. And I was always fascinated by it. Like, how long have these people been doing it? Do they like it? What's this about? So then I went away. When I was in college, I didn't have as much fun as my friends did there because we were kind of poor, and I was determined to get a good job, right? So while my friends were out having fun, I was probably in the library a little bit more than they were, right? And so I studied really hard, and I interviewed for a company that was a management consulting firm in San Francisco and Boston. It was that year they wrote a book called The Best Place to Work in America for a College Grad. There was actually a book written. And this was number one out of like 100 companies. And they came onto my campus to interview, and I interviewed. And because they were really bad at interviewing, I got a job offer from them. So what happened was they took us out drinking and dancing with the partners and everything else to wine us, to get us to accept the offer. And so I finally accepted it. And then I went to work, and I found out that I was miserable. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes, but the point of this is this. I had always thought that having a great job was about how much money you made and what kind of office you got and what you got to wear and if it was hard and all these things, and I was totally wrong. Having fulfillment and meaning and passion in your job is all about the environment there and how you're managed and the people you're with. And so I was wrong about that. I shouldn't have been, though, because I like that. You know that show Dirty Jobs? Anybody ever seen Dirty Jobs? Love that show. My kids love it, too. I have 4 boys. But I think they love it because just about every other episode has something to do with poo. You know what I mean? They're like, ooh, look at this, Dad. This is gross. And they're like loving it. Like, he's in the sewer. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. But what I love about that is that people who have what look like not very good jobs oftentimes seem really happy. I mean, I've seen an episode where a guy was like missing part of his finger. He's like, I work at an alligator farm. Here's what I do. The younger alligators come in. We have to figure out if it's a boy or a girl. We got to stick our finger. I don't know the anatomy, but I guess you got to put your finger up something and feel around. And that's how, and they're snapping at their fingers, and they're like, argh, and they're like putting them aside. And they're like, oh, this is the best. I've been here forever. I love these people. I love my job. Then I work with a lot of CEOs and senior executives at some of the sexiest companies you can imagine who are miserable. I work with professional coaches and athletes who are often miserable. See, the thing about it is, job fulfillment is not about the job. It's not about the externals of it. It's about what it's like to be there. And that's one of the things I learned the hard way. So here I was at this company called Bain & Company, a management consulting firm. And so I accepted the job. And I got to work, and I'm walking down the hallway, and I see one of those partners who had taken me out drinking and dancing to try to convince me to work there, who said, "You're going to be the best and the brightest. We're going to change your life. You've got the best job. You've made it, young man." And I was like, this is awesome. She loves me, or he loves me. And so then I go to my first day at work, and I'm walking down the hall, and I see one of them. I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" Oh, they didn't see me. They're busy. Whoa, boy. A few hours later, I see one of those partners, like, "How you doing?" So she didn't see me either. And I went to one of my colleagues, and I said, "Do you notice they don't seem to be looking at us?" And all of my classmates that got hired that year were like, "Yeah." They were like, "Did they lose our resumes or what? I mean, do they know who we are? I thought they liked us." And we found out that we had the first sign of a miserable job. This is really simple, but it's profound. If you feel like you're anonymous at work, you're never going to love your job. And we were getting paid well, we wore nice clothes, we had a beautiful view of the San Francisco Bay, we were doing what was supposed to be great work, but they could have cared less about us. After we took the job, we were nothing but a commodity to be used, and there was no interest in who we are as people. I remember because I drove, with my first client visit, I went up to Petaluma, to an eyeglasses manufacturing thing. That was our client. And I was the young person on the totem pole, but I got to go rent the car, drive up there, and I was with a consultant. And I was all excited. I said, "Hey, when we get there, I should talk to the people that work in the factory, and I should ask them." He goes, No. "You're going to be quiet. You're going to carry my bag. See, you're my monkey." He told me that, which I was like, "Thank you for sharing. That's very kind of you." I'm a Californian, so I appreciated that. But that's how they saw us. And that's why we were miserable in a job that was supposed to be fantastic. Okay? What I've since learned is that there are so many jobs where anonymity crushes a person's ability to love what they're doing and to love the experience and to feel fulfilled or dignified in their work. So Amy, who ran up here and is helping me with the slides, she had a friend that got out of college and studied the travel industry, and she got the best job. It was in Philadelphia, and she was going to work for this travel-related company. She was over the moon. She went to work there and worked there for a while, and she could never figure out why she didn't like it. And people were like, "What is wrong with you? It's exactly what you studied. You got your dream job." Well, eventually she had a baby, and she went out on maternity leave. And when she came back from maternity leave, her boss, for 4 months, didn't ask her a single question about her baby or what it was like to be a mom. Never even acknowledged what had gone on in her life. Okay? Anonymity is a job killer. So a friend of mine was a pro football coach. He still is. He's not a head coach now, but he's a coach. You guys all know who he is, if you follow football. Otherwise, it's like, well, who cares? My wife would be like that. Nobody knows who he is. But if you watch football, you know who this guy is. And he was the coach of a professional team near me, and so we got to know him, and he'd stop by my office to talk. And his team traded for a very famous player who's now in the Hall of Fame. You know who this guy was, a wide receiver. And this guy had a troubled history in his life and at some of the teams he played for, but he was remarkably talented. Now, they traded for him when he was about 25. Okay, so this is a 25-year-old. I will still call a 25-year-old a kid, if you will, because he was playing sports and he was very young and he had done nothing but that. And he had a difficult background. So I said to my friend, I said, "Hey, are you going to invite him over to your house with Nancy, his wife, and have dinner with him just to kind of get to know him and know what his life is like and why he's the way he is?" And he said, "Oh, no, Pat, this is professional football. This is a job. We don't do that. This is not college. They know what they need to do. And if they don't do it, the consequences will be there for them." And I was like, oh my gosh, it all made sense for me. Because see, I got invited to go to the Oakland Raiders training camp 15 years ago because one of the persons who worked in that organization read my books. And he said, "I want you to come and watch practice. And you can write." I was working on a book. "And then you can come to practice and eat with the players and hang out with him." And he was doing trades. It was in I was a kid in a candy store. He had like a board up with all the players. I was like, "You should trade for him and draft him." Anyway. But then I would go to lunch with these players, and I swear if you didn't know better, you would have thought these people were digging ditches at minimum wage. These were young people who were making lots of money to play a child's game for half a year, every year. And they seemed miserable. And I couldn't figure out why until I started talking to these coaches and talking to other people. Nobody was actually interested in them as a human being. Nobody was actually talking to them like they had a past or a family or anything else. In fact, I know a guy who's now a general manager of a team in the Bay Area. He got cut by his team and his coach didn't even tell him. And they were social friends with each other's wives. And when they cut him, they didn't bother to call up and say, hey man. Now let me contrast that with the most amazing executive, whose name escapes me right now, of the San Francisco Giants. Somebody will tell me. He was their GM a couple years ago. He worked for Brian Sabian. Do you remember what his name was? Anyway, somebody will remember. When their team was even thinking about trading one of their players, he would call the guy up and say, hey, I want you to come in. We're thinking about trading you. And I didn't want you to hear it from anybody else. I want to find out which teams you'd like to play for and where you'd like to live. Because we want you and your wife to feel good about this. So they'd work out a plan, and then when they finally made the trade, he'd call them and say, hey, listen, we're not announcing this to the media yet. I want to congratulate you. You're going to be a New York Yankee. And these players wanted to go back to that team. Players wanted to play for their team. And that was one of the reasons why they did so well. But that was completely not normal in professional sports. Professional athletes, we wonder why so many professional athletes go off the deep end in their lives. And I think it's a lot of the time because they really, in spite of the fact that they seem like they should be happy because they're famous and wealthy, they really don't feel known by the people that work for them. So how do you understand the power of this? Let me tell you a story about the power of not feeling anonymous. So a good friend of mine was a nurse. She actually didn't like nursing all that much. She's not a nurse anymore. But she worked in the ER of a hospital. And she said that whenever this one doctor, his name was Dr. Trimble, was on call, running the emergency room, not on call, but actually there in charge, everybody was totally excited to go to work. And she could never figure out why. She just said, we just love this guy, Dr. Trimble. Well, one night she figured it out. This is a true story. The other stories are not true. So they had a really difficult night in the emergency room. And Dr. Trimble had not an orderly, but what do you call it when the person is studying to be a doctor? Intern. Thank you very much. Good, you got that one right. I forgot. Oh, look, a bird. So anyway, he had an intern following him around for the night or during the rounds in the emergency room. And it was a really difficult night. One woman came in, I don't know what happened, but she almost bled to death, and they finally got her out of the ER and into the OR. At the end of the night, it was a very tough night. My friend was doing her charting, which means she had to fill out all the paperwork, but she was actually doing it near Dr. Trimble as he was debriefing the night with the intern. So they're talking about what happened that night, and they're going over everything, and then Dr. Trimble said to this guy, he said, hey, did you notice the orderly who came in and cleaned up the room after that woman left? We took her to the OR. And the guy said, no, I didn't notice him. He goes, well, his name is Carlos. Carlos, his wife's name is Maria. They're from Honduras. They live a few blocks from the hospital here. They have 3 children. These are their names. Here's what's going on in their school and in their life right now. And he said, I want you to get to know Carlos tomorrow and come and tell me something about him that I don't already know. And Nancy said, and that's why we love Dr. Trimble. The power of taking the time to get to know the people that work for us, to really get to know them personally and professionally, is a game changer. I can remember in my career early on, when somebody came by my office and said, hey, I heard your dad is sick, how's he doing? Or, hey, I know that you're interested in this field, how's that going? Or even in your job, you did a good project the other day and somebody told me about it. I'm really glad to hear about that, tell me about that. When people took an interest in me, I remembered that. I saved those emails for years. I did not save the pay stub I got the first time I got paid. Ladies and gentlemen, when we take the time to really know somebody personally and professionally, it changes everything. And yet, so often, employees don't feel that way. So often they don't. And when we're not known, it's almost impossible to love what we do. So the question that gets begged here is this. Why would I as a manager not take the time to get to know my people? There's actually some really good reasons why, okay? First of all, we forget what it was like to be that person. And we think, oh yeah, I don't even remember that. We have to really go back and ask ourselves, what was it like to be in that position and to have your manager, or heaven forbid, your manager's manager, actually tell you something interesting about you and take an interest in you and ask questions? That's what we forget. Secondly, we think we're too busy. We think, I don't have time, I got real work to do. And when we walk by people at work and don't take the time to stop and talk to them and understand what's going on in their life, we might as well be pulling money out of our pockets and throwing it into a fire. Because this is free motivation. So if we don't do that, that money goes away. That is one of the greatest motivators. Another reason why we don't do this is because sometimes we're embarrassed that we haven't been doing it in the past. This is really important. And so we think, I don't know. I had an employee, still do, and hers is a different case, but she had 2 daughters, Natalie and Allie. Let me tell you, I could never remember which one was which. But if you don't know their what's going on in their life, many managers are like, I don't want to start now, it's going to look dumb. And that's where we have to be humble enough and vulnerable enough to go to somebody and say, I realize I don't know anything. I've worked with you for 2 years, and I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know how old your kids are. I don't know what's going on with you and your wife, like your aspirations. I haven't checked in on how things are going. I'm really sorry. I wish I had done that. I'd like to start talking to you about that. And only 50% of the time when you do that, do they quit. I mean, no employee says, I can't believe you haven't done. They're going to be like, that's great. And did you hear about all those employees who quit that company because their managers were too interested in them as people? It was terrible. Nobody has ever left a company because they were too well known by the people that they worked for. And yet sometimes as leaders, even really well, I've never met a leader. Well, if you're a leader, there probably is a few out there. If you're that really rare leader that says, Pat, I'm just not that curious about the lives of the people that work for me, that's okay. Just don't be a manager. Do something else. But the vast majority of people I know are interested, but they just forgot what it was like, they got too busy, and then they started to feel bad about it. Or they have kind of the downside of humility, if you will. They're like, well, it wouldn't matter to her if I knew what was going on in her life. I'm just another person. She could probably care less. You know, I don't think there was ever a person in my career that I worked for that I wasn't glad to have them be interested in me as a human being. But when you get humble, you're like, and humility is the greatest of all the virtues, but it's so easy to go, I don't matter to them. See, to be a humble manager, it's right to think that I'm not more important than the people that I lead, because you're not. But your words and actions are more important. The things you say and do and how you look at them and you take an interest in them and the time you take with them actually does change the way they feel about what they're doing. So we have to make sure that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to humility. No, you're not a more important human being. We're all God's children, but the words and actions you have, they do carry more weight, and you have to realize that. Okay? So this is why anonymity remains such a, one, killer of job satisfaction, and 2, a competitive advantage. Because if you at Chico Electric can say, we are going to totally commit to every manager, really, this is Chico Electric, right? Yeah, nobody nodded, so I kind of thought you were Lulu's because of all the dudes with the hats and stuff, but you know. Or Third Love, even better, right? Do you guys know what Third Love is? Yeah, you know, I think they're rice farmers. Anyway, but if you decide at Chico Electric, we are going to make sure that every manager takes the time to know their people really well, let me tell you something. It's going to change their job satisfaction, their retention. You're going to attract more people. You're going to satisfy your customers better. Most importantly, it's going to change what it's like to be at work and how people go home and treat people. And imagine now if not only Chico does it, but everybody at Enlo and Build and everybody at Chico State and the farmers and the churches and the schools and Third Love. I mean, imagine if everyone in this community said, to work in Chico and Butte County means you will be known. That alone will change the world. Here. I mean, imagine if you went into the grocery store and knew, yeah, part of what it means to live in Chico is that people here expect to be known by their managers, and their managers expect to invest that time. I'm telling you right now, that would be a game changer. And it's entirely doable because it's friggin' free. You don't have to download an app, although we are going to build a website for you just to get all this stuff next week. We're going to be sending you. But you don't have to download an app. You don't have to pay a consultant. It's literally sitting down, and you're going to be practicing this later today. Sitting down and going through all of your employees and saying, what do I know? What do I not know? How can I start demonstrating that? And by the way, if you're a manager and an employee, which most of us are, you're going to be getting that too. All right? So anonymity is a job killer. There's no reason for it. There's plenty of reasons, but not good excuses why people aren't known in their work. Okay? Anybody have I'm going to take a break here for some water. Anybody have a question and get a free book? Oh, there's a question right there. Yes. I love it. Working from the bottom up, is it possible for an employee to help their manager and get to do it upward? And the answer is, thank you very much, Angela. The answer is absolutely. See, here's the funny thing. Two things about that. Everyone thinks that their manager is managing in exactly the way they want to. We always assume, like, well, they make me mad, but they must be doing that on purpose. Right? Because after all, I know they're living their lives fully intentionally. You know what I mean? And how many of us are living our lives fully intentionally, right? I mean, if you're a parent, you know, you're just, oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? And if you're a manager and an employee, you know that we can often do this. Like, well, when I manage my people, it's really stressful. But when my manager manages me, he's just being a dick. You know what I mean? It's easy not to have empathy upward. Did I just say dick? That was it. So what I would say is this. If you're an employee, love up. And there's two ways to do that. You can go to your manager. One way to do it is just to take an interest in them. One way to do it is to realize even that manager would like their employees, like, tell me about your family, where you went to school. Once they realize it, they're probably going to go, wow, I should do that too. So just model for them. And yes, employees can definitely do this. The other one is just to sit down with a manager and say, you know something? I would love it if you knew more about me and who I am. And I know you're busy, and I don't want to put anything on you, but I think I would love to chat with you every once in a while, just about what's going on in my work and in my life and everything else. Only the worst manager would go, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do that. I mean, can you imagine? Yeah, keep that to yourself. And if that really is the case, you probably should know that and find a different place in the organization to work at or a different organization to work at. But the truth of the matter is very, 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 very few leaders wouldn't love to do this. But a reminder, a kind reminder from below is a fantastic thing to do. Okay? And you can do that. And because this movement is not going to happen just with managers, it's going to happen because people are going to go, hey, I'm supposed to be known here. You can't be loved if you're not known. And you should feel love from your manager. I know that sounds touchy-feely and soft, the L word of, but the truth of the matter is, I was thinking about this just recently. Managing is really distribution of care. It's like, who am I caring for today? And how much care do I have in me? And how can I give it to the right people who need it the most? It's like parenting. You know what I mean? And so the L word is appropriate here. But you got to get stuff done, too. It's like, hey, I love you guys. You screwed up that big job we had over there, but it doesn't matter because I love you, you know? It's like, well, I'm going to love you even when you work somewhere else if you don't do this better. Because that, too, is love. That, too, is love. Anonymity. How many managers here think they could do better on anonymity? Raise your hand if you think you could do better on this one. How many think you're perfect at this? You're definitely. All right, I have a few of those. Good for you. Good for you. You have a perfect, that's awesome. Are any of your employees here, by the way? We can add, no. Yeah, back there. No, that's good. Good for you. Good for you. All right. Yes, question.
There's this thing in management culture that is sort of the opposite of what you're saying here, and that is that you're not supposed to fraternize with the troops and keep your distance and don't get personal, and there's all kinds of pitfalls in that. Could you respond to that, please?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked about that because we do live in California. Did you know it's now illegal to make eye contact during a job interview? You're not allowed to do that. So stupid. Wait, does that apply here in the state of Jefferson? Here's the deal. If you let lawyers and government, politicians run your business, you're just going to go out of business. And people want to be known. And yes, do you have to have emotional intelligence? Yeah. You're not like, hey, how you doing? How much do you weigh? And do you like hot tubs? I mean, yeah, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? I mean, you can't be an idiot. Oh, you get a book. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. I'm giving him a book that I titled Getting Naked. Interesting. It's not about that. It's not about that. But the vast majority of people know how to be appropriate. And I will have people go, I don't think I should do that because I had this one employee once and every time I asked, she'd say, well, my cat has worms again. And we'd be like, we don't want to hear about it. But you don't not do the right thing because of the exceptional abuse of the right thing, right? And so, yeah, be sensible and take it baby steps, But boy, human beings need to be known. And don't listen to people that say that's not true. It just is true. And start from a place of love. So know them in the way that helps them feel loved. Not that makes you feel good about it. First, it's about them. And then you'll know where your boundaries are and all that kind of stuff. It's a crazy time, isn't it? It's a crazy time. Okay, that is anonymity. The second sign of a miserable job is the one that I first discovered, which prompted me to write this book. So I was in Oklahoma City coming back from a talk I was doing there, I think, and I had Karen with me, a friend of mine, whose son went to Chico State. Oh, look, a bird. Oh, Karen. Anyway, focus. And we were in the airport, and we needed something to eat before we caught our flight. And so we went to this barbecue stand, which people heard me talk about this, and they wrote to me and said it was Corky's Barbecue. It was called Corky's Barbecue. So we were there at Corky's, and we were ordering our sandwich, and it was a classic situation. I walked up, and the lady was like, can I help you? And I was like, yeah, I'd like a number 4 combo. Number 4 combo, stand over there. And I was like, oh, wow, standing over here. And they're like, number 4 combo. And I'm, oh, thank you, whatever. And I was like, oh, man. So we sit down to eat, and we're just sitting there in the airport, stressed out, like airports are. The airport's a place of great horror in the world. Did you guys know Hitler was born and raised in an airport, as it turns out? It explains it, right? I mean, what is it about a bunch of wonderful people? We could take all of you wonderful, happy people, and we could just move you into an airport, and it would be like these damn people. You know what I mean? It's like, why we lose our, so this is what it was like. So this woman's working there, Karen and I are sitting there eating our hamburger or whatever, and this young kid comes up, and he's got the hat on with the thing, he's all working at Corky's Barbecue, and he's all excited. He's probably 17, and he's like, hey, everybody, and I'm like, whatever. And he goes to the thing, he's like, can I help you? And somebody orders something. He goes, okay, sir, that's great. Number 3. And I'm like, number 3. And I was like, they're going to beat the life out of this kid in days. There's no way. He's going to be miserable in his job soon because they're going to teach him how to do that. And so I said to Karen, I said, don't you think that kid deserves to like his job more than anybody? I mean, so he's never going to make a ton of money doing this. And neither are these other people. It's a tough job. They got to go through airport. They got to go through security. They're back there cooking food. People aren't nice. Don't you think of all the people in society, he probably deserves to like his job more than anybody? And I said, what would it take to help that kid love his job, to love his job? What would he need? And we were talking, and I said, Karen, I think the biggest problem with his job is that he thinks it doesn't matter. People are like, oh, you work at a fast food restaurant at the airport? Well, I'm such a loser. And which is totally wrong. I said, I said, what would be really cool is if a manager could go up to that kid and say, hey, do these people look like they're happy in the airport? No, sir, they don't. That's because they're not. They're not. You know something? You got to get them food, and they need food. That's really important. We've got that figured out, and that's your job. But what I really want you to do is I want you to treat them in a way that makes them behave differently. I want you to be so kind to them and give them such great service that will make them probably be nicer to somebody else in the airport or the person sitting next to them. Your job is to introduce joy into an otherwise joyless world. That's your job. Now let me ask you this. Do you think that kid would like to hear that? I think so. I mean, I was a busboy, and nobody ever said that to me. It was like, put their beans in the doggy bag and get it out the door, and I was like, oh gosh. But if they said, no, this is a really important job. And this is what you're doing. And I want you to understand that. See, the thing that we're lacking in our job is relevance. And if we feel like our job is irrelevant, we cannot like that job. Now, some people are surgeons, or ministers, or priests, or teachers, or firefighters, or they're working at the long-term recovery for Campfire. Those people know why they do their job. They have built-in relevance. You wake up every day and you know why you're doing what you're doing. And just a 20-minute drive up and back will remind you of that. Which is why when a teacher or a doctor or a firefighter or a police officer or a surgeon loses their sense of relevance, it's really tragic. When that teacher goes, I'm just grading these snotty kids' papers and looking forward to summer, it's like, oh, I think teaching is done for you, right? Because see, you have a job where your relevance is baked into it, and that's a vocation. Most human beings in the world, the vast majority, don't have that built in. I mean, most of our jobs aren't like, yes, I'm changing the world, but we are changing the world. We just don't know how. And the job of a manager is to help his or her employees understand how they're changing the world. Changing the world maybe in some small way. Maybe changing the world just for one other person. But everyone in the world has a job who has some relevance and changes somebody else's life. It might be for customers, okay? But it might be for other employees that you're helping serve. It might be for your manager. It might be for a vendor. It might be for somebody 3 steps down the value-added chain. But everybody has to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Now, I know if you work for the Rice Farmers Cooperative, which we drove by on the way here, you could say, well, we're feeding the world. It's like, well, are you feeding the world? No, I'm actually cleaning the vat where we put stuff in to clean. I don't know how rice is made, so there's probably a vat involved at some point in the process, okay? But the point of the matter is, it's not some global thing. It's like, how is your job making a difference, right? And maybe your job at Chico State doesn't even interact with students, but you're doing something else that ultimately, but who is the person you're serving? And you need to realize if you do a good job, he or she will go home at night and feel better, right? And here's the thing, every job has it. If you can find a job that doesn't matter to anyone, anywhere in the world, then by all means cut that job. But most people's jobs really do. The problem is they're not making that connection. They just don't know. Or nobody's reminded them. Okay? So what are we talking about here? Remember I talked about professional athlete? Well, actually the best example I want to give you is a guy I know who was he worked in IT and technology for a number of years, and he finally got a job he was so excited about. He got a job in a hospital system doing IT, and he said, I finally get to apply my interest in IT to help people. And so he worked there for 3 months, and he goes, I got to get out of here. I said, what's wrong, Al? He goes, they haven't talked about patients or healthcare or sick people or anything once. All I'm doing is more IT. Nobody's even connected why I'm doing this and how it's helping anybody. They're just not interested in that. See, we all have a need to know how our job impacts other people's lives. It might be our manager. Once, I remember when fairly young in my career, I was working for a woman, and she reported directly to the CEO of a company, and she said, I need you to prepare the slides for my meetings. And so I was just making PowerPoint slides for her, and she came back and she said, hey, those slides you made, they made me look really good. That really made me look good in front of the CEO. And I was like, oh, well, awesome. I just wanted to know that it mattered to her. She was excited. I was excited that I did something that mattered to her. And we all need to know that. Here's a stupid example. Here's a crazy, stupid example. So because I speak for a living, and I have a number of women in my office, and we're all good friends, when my hair gets a little long, they're like, hey, Elvis, you got to get your hair cut. You got a speech coming up. And I'm like, oh, I know. And so I needed to get my hair cut, but the regular place, it was a Monday, and I was leaving on Tuesday, and they weren't open, blah, blah, blah. So I went to the person who ran our office, and I didn't like to ask her to do things like this. And now they do everything for me, which is wonderful. But I didn't like to ask. And I said, Allison, could you help me find a place to get my hair cut? She was like, yeah, sure. She looked it up. She got me in there. I went and got my hair cut. I was coming back to work, and I was looking stylish. And I was like, I don't want to say anything to Allison, because how demeaning is that? And I finally said, I think it's stupid that I don't say that. I'm like, Allison, my hair, I'm really happy. Thank you so much. She was like, oh, I love helping you. But I was going to deprive her of that because I thought it wasn't worthy of her to do that. All of us want to go to work and do something that matters to someone. Now, some of you get to work with customers, and that's awesome. And they go, hey, you got our electricity up after PG&E cut it. But no, sorry, had to get that one in there. Focus. But not everybody has a customer to serve. But they have a person whose their job matters to in some way. So, honestly, the nurse, remember the nurse? Well, when she went to graduate school, probably after she was a nurse, for something else, she worked in a restaurant, her and her best friend. And so they didn't like it. They bitched about it. Ooh, is that a word? Bitch. That's a verb. Bitched about it. It's fine, right? In the 70s, that was like a real verb. I think you could use that in 3rd grade, like to bitch about something, but now. So they would complain all the time. Their manager finally pulled them aside and said, come here, ladies, come here. You see those people over there you're complaining about? The ones that are leaving all the Cheerios and stuff on the floor? I'm pretty sure this is the only meal that woman eats that she doesn't make for herself every day. And see those other ladies that are just getting their food and it's late and they're probably going to be here over time? I think they're sisters. They look like they're in their early 80s and they haven't seen each other in years. And that they're celebrating a birthday for his son, and that's why they're doing this. See, the thing is, everybody here has a reason to be here, and it's kind of an event in their lives, sometimes big, sometimes small. I want you guys to realize your job is to make them special. Now, how easy would it be for you? Well, I don't give a darn. Everybody wants to give a darn. She said her and her friend at breaks, instead of complaining about people in the restaurant, would start getting together and go, oh my gosh, you should see, I talked to this customer over here, and here's what's going on with them. It's really exciting. Everybody had a story, and suddenly what she thought was just a part-time job was a vocation. She loved what she did, because all of us need to love what we do, and it doesn't always mean that it's ask every 16-year-old, 17-year-old, maybe even 21-year-old, hey, what do you want to do? I want to be a video game designer. It's like, why? Because then I'll get to play video games all day. Well, that's not what it takes. Every job has the capacity to make a difference in somebody's life. And our job as managers is to help them figure that out. One of the things I came to realize was that professional athletes, one of the other reasons why they don't like their job, and you think about Aaron Rodgers. So, he won last night, by the way. Did anybody watch that game? I think you probably did. Yeah. So anyway, focus, because I could go off on that too. Can you believe that guy when it hit him and popped up and got an interception? They should even give an interception for that. That's not his fault. So anyway, enough. I'm so focused, I'm not going to tease her for leaving. And she looked at her, she was like, oh, no. It's okay. So Aaron Rodgers, when you're an athlete or a rock star, do you know that the most satisfied ones are the ones that find relevance by doing community work? Because they're sitting there going, I don't think throwing touchdowns is what it's all about here. And if they don't find a relevant way to use their fame, fortune, and attention to serve others in some way, it's really difficult to love what you do. See, all human beings are looking for relevance in their lives, and our jobs as managers is to help them find that. Now, let me casually go over. I learned a thing from pastors and ministers. When you don't know what you're going to say next, you just repeat the last thing, and you do it slowly. So everyone needs to find some reason to do their work. You're back at your notes. Nobody even knows. Okay, what do we got here? Al, waitress, yeah. Pro athletes, oh, yeah. No, we got that one. Hey, so really hit them all. So why don't we do this one? Why don't we do this one? If you're a manager, like, oh, why don't I go remind my people why their job matters, right? Why don't I do that? And this is a little different, the anonymity one. I mean, I think the biggest reason is because it's sometimes kind of hard. And you're afraid maybe there's nothing, but there always is something. So we just don't have the conversation, but we have to. In fact, it's not just us figuring it out, it's us maybe taking a stab at it and going, what do you think it is? And they might say, well, something, when I do this, well, I know. And they're like, that's exactly who's the person you need to be serving. But we have to sit down and help our people figure out why their work changes someone else's life in some way, large or small. Okay? We have to do that because they deserve it. They need it in order to love their work. Nobody who goes to work and like, this doesn't really matter, can possibly like their job. I don't care how much money they're making. I don't care how nice the accoutrements are. They need to know why it matters. So why don't we do it? One, because it's a little hard. It requires creativity, a little bit of creativity sometimes. We have to figure it out. Another reason why we don't is because we think it's obvious. We're like, well, during orientation, when I hired them 3 years ago, I told them why their job was important. If they don't remember that, then maybe they shouldn't work here anymore. It's like, whoa. I mean, even a surgeon needs to be reminded. Even a surgeon needs to be reminded. Who are the people that I meet with? Oh, nurses. Like, I was talking to a nurse the other day, and I said, do you remember how important your job is? Do you remember every day? Because I remember when my dad passed away, and the nurses that treated, they were angels. They were like the way they treated my dad. And I remember thinking, you do have the most important job in the world. And so I was talking to a nurse, and she goes, we forget. We kind of think, well, I'm just going to my job. It's my shift. I have to get this done. Stop. And the nurse manager has to stop and go, I just saw that woman in there, her family coming around her, and the way you dealt with her changed their lives. Gave them hope, gave them peace. Okay? But that's true for everyone's job. That's true for everyone's job. All righty? Why else don't we do it? Because we're too busy. I don't have time to stop and talk to them about that. Terrible reason. Terrible reason. And then the last one is sometimes we're a little embarrassed because we think it's going to be like, I don't want to tell them that their job matters to their boss because when you do a good job for your boss, he or she has peace of mind and can leave at night and not be so worried about things. Because you think people are going to go, well, I don't give a damn about that. Who cares about that? If you work for your boss and you do something, you want to know. You want to know. So sometimes we're embarrassed. Sometimes we're too busy. Sometimes it's hard. And sometimes we just aren't sure that it's going to be there, and it always is. Okay. How many people here think, if you're a manager, how many people here think, I'd love to hear a story from somebody that's good at this, or that's done it well, that's creatively helped somebody realize why their job matters, even if they might have overlooked it. But before we get that answer, that hand to go up, how many managers here, and this isn't just like every manager raise your hand, but how many managers here think that they can do better at helping their people do this? Okay. And remember, it doesn't always connect to the global reason why you're doing what you're doing. There's people that work in the long-term recovery thing that may never actually deal with the families. They're doing something behind the scenes, and maybe their job is to make your job better. So it's really important to understand that. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. We're going to stand up and stretch and talk for 7 minutes. I can't let you out because we've locked the doors. We're going to have but it's like hard to sit for this long, right? And college students, you know this. So stand up, Take 10 minutes, 10 full minutes. Stretch, walk around, talk. No. Okay, what's our third thing? So what makes a person unable to feel fulfilled in their work is if they're not known and if they don't know why their job matters to someone else. The last thing is this. We call it, oh, did I do it again? Yeah. Oh, pay no attention. Pay no attention to that. Immeasurement. Anonymity. Again, it's twice. Immeasurement. This is not a word you'll find in the dictionary. We made it up ourselves. Because here's the third thing, and I'm bad at this one as a manager, let me tell you. The third thing that people need is they need to be able to assess or measure for themselves if they're doing a good job. You ask a person, hey, are you doing well in your job at Chico Electric or at Hignall? Are you doing well? And they go, I don't know. And if you don't know, you feel out of control. You see, because if you don't know, it's probably going to depend on your manager what mood they're in when you ask them or they fill out your performance review. And that's horrible. That is horrible. I used to work at a company, that Bain & Company, and they would rank us against our classmates every 6 months. And we were always like, what do they rank us on? And we figured out it was whatever we did the day before the ranking session, you know. And other than that, if we were doing a good job, it just depended on if our manager was in a good mood or decided he or she liked us. And that's horrible. That feels like an emotional form of slavery. Like, I have to just make this person, how are you doing in your job? You got this review coming up. Yeah, I'm sucking up really hard. That is horrible. See, all human beings need some observable, objective way to assess whether they're doing a good job. Now, the problem with the immeasurement is people think it's immetricment. It's not about a metric. I mean, if there's a good metric that defines whether you're doing a good job, that's fantastic. But there rarely is an easy, clean metric. And that's what we want. We want something we can measure. In the book I wrote, in the book that you have, at one point, this guy that takes over the restaurant goes to the slacker of all slackers in the restaurant, this kid who runs the drive-thru. And the reason why the guy got involved, you'll find out, is because he messed up his order a number of times. And so he goes to him and he says, hey, I want you to measure if you're having a good night in the drive-thru window. And the kid says, well, what should I measure? He goes, I don't know. What do you think you should measure? And the kid says, the number of people that come through the drive-thru every night? That would be a good metric. You could measure that. And he goes, do you control the number of people? No, I have nothing to do with that. That's a bad measurement then. He says, well, how about how long it takes them to get their order? Do you control that? He goes, no, that's really the kitchen. Not a good measurement. He says, here's what I want you to do. How about if you measure how many, the quality, like how many errors you make so that you pack the bags and give them their order correctly? He goes, yeah, I could do that. Okay, that's one. And here's another one. Why don't you measure the number of people in a night that you get to smile or laugh that come through the drive-thru? And the kid looks at him like he asked him to go to crawl through the drive-thru and give people a back rub, you know? He goes, what do you mean? He goes, just see if you can make them laugh or smile. He goes, well, who's going to judge me? He goes, you are. Just write it down on a piece of paper. But I might lie. And he goes, I'm not tying it to your performance review or your salary. I just want to come to you at the end of the night and say, how'd you do tonight? And have a way to answer that question for themselves. Right? You know why salespeople tend to have higher job satisfaction? I mean, there's all different kinds of things, but if you work in sales and you say to them, how are you doing? They go, pretty crappy, look at my numbers, or pretty well, look at my numbers. They know. They're not like, I don't know. There's a certain clarity in that, right? You know, waiters and waitresses, it's an interesting thing. If you try to take away their tips, and the government's always trying to do that, which is stupid. Sorry. But Jefferson... The state of Jefferson probably agrees with me on that one, I'm guessing. But you know, you work in a restaurant. It's not that they're getting super rich doing this. You know what a tip is at a restaurant? It's an indication that you did a good job. When you work at a restaurant and at the end of the day and you're a waiter or waitress and you say, man, I think I did a good job, and then you walk by and you look in to see what they tipped you, you're not going like, God bless you, 25%, I'm getting a new condo, because it's, you know, it's like a few dollars. But you're like, I knew I did a good job for them and they thanked me for it. And that is feedback that told me I did a good job. Athletes, this is the one thing athletes have, they get feedback. I was a distance runner when I was in high school and college, played other sports too, but if I came off the track and said, what was my time, coach? And he said, it doesn't matter, I felt good about the way you ran. I just said, when I recover, I'm gonna kill you. Or imagine coming off the court in basketball or football and saying, what's the score? No score. You're doing a great job. We all want to know what the score is, to know if we're succeeding. It's like a human desire. And when we as leaders say, no, you don't need to know, you're fine. You know, I had a friend, he worked at that management consulting firm with me. He survived like 6 years. I only worked there 2. And when he left, he was just broken. He was just so miserable. And they did an exit interview with him, which was ridiculous. And they were like, what could we have done to keep you here longer? And he said, anything. Anything. That's what he told them. Okay, anything. Thank you. The point is, people want and they need to know if they're succeeding for their own benefit. Now, why don't we do this as a manager? This is the reason why I don't do it. Sometimes the worst reason not to do it, I don't think this is why I don't do it. Maybe there's some deep, dark thing in me. But sometimes we can do it because it's kind of nice when you're the manager where you can say, well, I'll determine how you did. It would be like a professor saying, okay, your grade is going to be determined 85% based on whether I like you. Because at the end of the year, it's like, you're pissing me off. You're getting a D. But a good professor says, here's the syllabus. Here's what you have to do. Here's what it's worth. It's up to you. I'm empowering you to do a good job, and you know how to do it. It's going to be up to you. Okay? So we have to give people a sense of their own destination and give them a way to do that. We don't do that sometimes because we want to hold on to that. That would be the dark reason. Another reason would be because sometimes it's hard. Oftentimes there's no easy metric. And so what you need to do is you just need to say, here's what I want you to do. Every week I want you to go to the 5 constituents that you work with out there, the people that you're supposed to, whose lives you, and just go ask them, how you doing? Give them a scale, green, yellow, or red. And then come tell me how your colors are. Sometimes it's as simple as that. If you're a teacher, it's like, well, test scores come in and it's like, no, how about if you just call your parents throughout the semester and find out how they're doing and assess for yourself. Because it's not about catching them doing something wrong. It's about giving them some visibility into what they can do right. In measurement, it's really important, okay? And sometimes we decide, I'm too busy, but that doesn't make any sense because it really helps people be better in their work. Now, I say I'm bad at this one because I think laziness is the third one. Because this one takes a little bit more work and a lot more creativity to figure out. And sometimes it's like, I think he knows when he's doing a good job. And it's like, well, let's try to put just a little more structure around that than leaving it quite that open-ended. So some people like me like to leave it open-ended. Other people are like, I want a 12-page analysis so that I could just add up the number and determine you're getting a 2.4% increase. Now, I think when we do that too much, I still think the professor needs to have a little bit of room for class participation and for showing up at events that they didn't want to go to. Way to go, you guys. Okay. We're going to move now to the last and most important thing, and that is, how are we going to implement all this? How are we going to implement all this? All right? So let's talk about anonymity. Anonymity. I want you to turn in your booklets to page anonymity. Is there a page number there? What is it? Employee sheets. Go to the employee sheets toward the back there. And I want you to do this. If you're a manager, I want you to write down at the top the anti-misery worksheet, your employee's name, write down today's date, and in that thing where it says notes, I want you to just write down whatever you know about that employee. And if there's something you don't know, write that in there too. Don't know what's going on there. So we're just going to take one employee, and you're going to do it for them, okay? And if you're an employee and you're not a manager, then sit down and do this for yourself. Actually, do it for your manager. I love what you asked over there. You inspired me. Write down your manager's name, and I want you to know, what do you know about them? And just take a few minutes here to catalog around one employee or your manager what it is that's known or not known. Okay? I'm going to call on a few people to see how they're doing. Oh, thank you. You're bringing me one. You're so great. Ooh. Oh, thank you, Nick. That's Tina from Hignall. Tina is one of the people that helped do all this. She's probably like the head of the local not Chamber of Commerce, because I know you're here, but like Tina's just amazing around here and what she does. And she works for Hignall, and they do so much for the area. All righty. So you're writing this stuff down? What do you know? What do you not know? Okay, I'm going to give a free book to the person who admits that they don't know something very fundamental about one of their employees. Like somebody who just stands up and goes, I don't know. Like Cody up here worked with me for 3 years, and one day I walked into the office and said, what's your last name again? Because it's kind of plain. It's Thompson, you know, and I know him, I know his wife, I know everything about him. I forgot his last name. I think it was actually after a year. Still, it was pathetic. So I want somebody to stand up and tell me, be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know this about this employee and I need to find out. Who's willing to do that for a book? Are you willing to do that?
I am, Pastor.
All right. Confess away, my friend.
Last week I led a training. I had 11 people in the meeting, and I didn't know the names of 2 of them that have been with me more than 6 months.
All right. That is awesome. Didn't know their names. They've been with you for 6 months. You, my friend, are my hero because we all experience that, and thank you for saying that. Here, I'm going to toss this. I'm going to make it all the way up there. After. Do we have another brave soul here?
I have 3 people that directly work underneath me, and I don't know any of their children's names.
You have 3 people that work, you said? And he doesn't know their children's names. You rock. Here you go. I can throw that to you. That is great. And so you're going to, though. Oh, you already have it. Okay, give it to one of them, whatever their names are. Good for you. Anybody else want to admit one of those? We'll have other chances to do this. That is fantastic. And what I want you to do is I want you to go sit down with them and go, I can't believe that I don't know your children's names. It's not because I don't care, but because I've just never sat down to do that, and I want to get to know it. And be vulnerable, like you were just now. I mean, you just admitted that in front of 1,000 people. You can do that in front of 3. Good for you. God bless you. All right. How about manager stuff? Anybody want to share anything about what they're going to do, what they don't know, or what they want to know about their manager? Anyone? Bueller? Ferris Bueller joke. A few people got it. Yeah, good. Thank you. Okay. Here's the key. Don't just make this a one-time thing. I have a binder here. It's very special. It's made in PowerPoint on the front. It says Manager's Engagement Notebook. I did this before we started this program. Personal and confidential. I leave it on my desk. People go by and look at it all the time. Amy, I didn't know you had bunions. Oh, interesting. You know, I'm not very good at that. But I just wrote in here what I knew about people. And I work in an office. There's 11 of us in the office. Weldon, you've been there many times. Angela and Chris have too. It's a big open office. And when I went through this, I was amazed at what I thought I knew and I didn't. Because I sat down with him. It's not just about, okay, this is what I know about you. Sit down and have a 20-minute conversation with your employee and just say, let's start with anonymity. This is what I think I know about you. Like, I'm going to do Amy here. I'm going to do it out loud in front of everybody. Amy's backstage. So, there's Amy. Carter's getting ready for college. She has a senior in high school. And I'm telling you this because this is the kind of stuff. And I know he's interested in design. And so he's trying to figure out where he can go, where he can design like products and furniture. And he likes art and photography. He's an INTJ. And so that I know is Myers-Briggs type. And so that's an interesting thing. And this is one of her 2 children. He's going away to college next year. And then her dad passed away a few years ago. So her mom, Gail, is dealing with that. That's not easy. What is she going to do at the house? Her daughter, Haley, is a freshman in high school. Very cute, too, so Amy's very worried about that. Her husband, Rich, retired recently from a job at the EPA, and he doesn't know what he's going to do, so they're figuring all that out. And Amy's role has changed at our company, and she feels like she has a very important role. She's the general manager, but that's a very general manager. She does lots, and sometimes she doesn't feel like her job is very clear. And so do people know what she does to contribute? That's the kind of stuff. That make sense? Does that help you understand what I'm getting at here? Okay. At Southwest Airlines, the head of HR there was a great guy. He ran of all administration. Now he's over at Veridesk, but he would interview people, and here's what he would say. He'd say, so tell me, what was the largest number of people you ever managed? And people would be like, I had 20 direct reports once. Okay, what were their names? Yeah, They were all John. Every one of them was John. When he'd pick one of the employees and say, tell me what was going on in their life when you were managing them. Because at Southwest Airlines and Chick-fil-A, they're two of our clients. There's a reason why people love working there. I was on a Southwest flight 2 days ago, and I was like, how are things at Southwest? They do it every time. They're like, we love it here. They will look you in the eye and say, oh yeah, it's great. You do that at American or United and Continental, they're like, you are so cruel. You are so cruel. I don't do it anymore because it's like, and you go to drive through at Chick-fil-A or at our favorite coffee place, Dutch Brothers. How in the world do they do it? You know why? Because and it starts at the very top. They actually take an interest in the people that work there. And when you go to Chick-fil-A or you go to Dutch Brothers and they treat you so well, you just realize that is an amazing thing. And they're happy to be here. They're happy to be with their families. It makes work great. Anonymity is something there's no reason for that. Okay? Make sense, everybody? Now, we're going to make a website for you to download more of these sheets and to give you some ideas. Like, I literally took a binder, high tech, and there's these things called 3-hole punches. And I have a sheet for each of my employees. So there's Amy Hyatt, and I did this earlier this year, and I wrote communicated on there. It says that stuff on there. Okay? So that's anonymity. Okay, irrelevance. Whose life does it eliminate irrelevance? Whose life does this person impact? Anybody here have a good story, a book-worthy story about something? You do. Oh, you have a question. That's good too.
So do you have recommendations when you do have a large group of staff?
What do I recommend if I have a large group? Okay, how big?
So 25.
25. Okay, whoa, 25. 170. And you're at Enloe. Yeah. So here's the deal. You should quit. That's all right. So here's the deal. Now, one thing I would say, we'll get to the 170 in a minute here. I have some questions about that. Is your boss here, by the way? No, let's go. Good. Oh, yes, she is. Come on up here. It's going to be like Jerry Springer. Remember, the thing is, they have to be known. And in your case, you might need to create, there might be a core group of people who share that load of knowing them, right? Because there's no way that any employee in any organization can be unknown. The question is, how do we go about it and who's the right person? And so when it's 25, I would say if it really makes sense that it's 25 and there's no way to layer that or to figure that out, then what I would just say is take a weekend or take 2 days at work and close the door and crank through these. I did 11 employees in about 4 hours. I was shocked. I thought, but I was like, okay, this is the thing. And then I did probably a 15 to 20 minute conversation after I just went through these things. And the people in my office were like, we do this for a living. We've read your book, Pat. This really made a difference to us. I know, I was like the cobbler's children without shoes. I thought I should do this. Now, is it nurses or anything? Yeah, I was going to say, so you have a whole bunch of nurses. Are there shift leaders or?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're probably going to be working with the shift leaders. Are you a shift leader?
She's the chief nursing.
The CNO, the Chief Nursing Officer of Enloe is here. That's cool. So I would say, and what you can do with your people is say, yeah, let's give Enloe a big round of applause. And that's what's so great about a community. How many people have had children at Enloe here? Look at this. Enloe, the way they manage people. How many people know somebody that works there? So if we can do this, think about what this community, I think there's 1% of Butte County in this room right now. And I joke about that, but if we can plant these seeds, they will grow, and a year from now, this will be different. And wait till people go, you know that place where Paradise burned? Well, not only did they rebuild that town, but they rebuilt the whole culture of management and families and work experience and cooperation across businesses. This is a totally worthwhile and very real social experiment here. And it starts with a chief nursing officer and one of the shift leaders or nurses that manage out figuring out how can we make these people known. Okay? So figure that out. And sometimes it might be 25. And you know something? The only thing crazier than doing this for 25 people is what? Not doing it. Not doing it. Okay. Let's talk about irrelevance. Anybody want to go on irrelevance here? Anybody have a story for me? I see a few more books over here. Anyone? One in the way back question. Here, sir, I'm going to throw this to you, and you're going to give this to the woman behind you. Thank you. Oh, is this like you think this might be just a unique one-off question? Yeah. Well, give us a shot. Okay. Pat, I'm attracted to you. And that could have been something weird. Like, I was thinking famous last words. Well, give it a shot. Oh, yes, I will. That is so nice. That is so nice. Oh, yeah. I've always said that. Chico State people are bootstrappers. They work hard. They don't think they're entitled, and they get great stuff done. So that's a race to remember, though. It's true, too. I mean, I meet a lot of them that I'm like, you rock. They're not like, what do you got for me? I think you should take care of me. They're like, what do you want me to do? I'll do it. Irrelevance. That person who goes, I don't know why I do this. I don't know who it serves. Yes?
So I have kind of a flip question.
A flip question.
Yeah, because most of my work has been in nonprofit.
Nonprofits.
Where you have high visibility, you're not anonymous, the work is terribly relevant, you're passionate, you care, there's a mission. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about why people in nonprofit would be miserable in their jobs.
Okay, so her question was, she's worked in nonprofits, and where the people generally have high visibility and they have a very clear mission and relevance. So, and are you saying, but there is a lot of misery, you said? Or are you saying, so they, yes, and I think a big reason relates to the last one, because too many nonprofits should run like for-profits, and they should be about getting things done, right? And for-profits should run like nonprofits, like we should realize that there's a purpose to this other than just making money. And I think in too many nonprofits, you know what's a killer? Is mediocrity. Settling for less. It's like, and churches, God bless all the churches here. I do a lot of work with churches. It's like, would I say to church leaders, throw up your hand if you're a church leader. Right. So you know what I say to church leaders? Like, hey, is this work you do more important or less important than that other company down there? And they're like, well, I guess it'd be, yeah, it's their soul. I think we can say that's pretty important. So my question now is, why do you tolerate things that those companies don't? And they're like, oh, shit. They don't say that. And that's the thing. Sometimes the currency is like, well, I like what I'm doing and it's meaningful. It's like, no, that's not enough. You have to do it better. Nonprofits should work better than for-profits because the stakes are higher, and churches should work harder than anybody. Is that a good answer? All right, thank you. Amen. Can I hear an amen? Amen. All right, wow, that was awesome. So, irrelevance, write down. Anybody write down anything good about irrelevance? Take a moment to write down something. You want to share with me?
I just had a comment about relevance in the nursing field.
Relevance in the nursing field.
What we do is take the comments that we get from patients and share them around and put them in an extra specifically to the person that the patient has. So when we have people that do surveys, it's hard to come on, and if they say something positive about a staff person, then we get them the feedback specifically and measurably to that staff person to tell them how relevant they were for that patient.
I love it. So in a hospital, they have a system, and sometimes if it's a system, it can lose some of its meaning. It's great to have it. But where if somebody says a comment about somebody and they mention somebody in particular, then they send it to that person and they say, look, we got this feedback from you, and they get it, which is, I think, a fantastic thing. The key is, though, what do you do with that? And I think the key is if the manager of that person shares it with them and talks to them about it versus getting it in the mail. Because I'm pretty sure at United, they'll send a card to somebody if I did something well, but it pisses them off because they're like, well, my manager didn't give a crap about this. It's like, congratulations, you did a great job. We don't really care. It's not going to affect your career. You know what I mean? And so I know that doesn't happen at Enloe, but sometimes if we lose the art of appreciation by just systematizing, now it's great that you have a system for that. The question is, I'd almost like it, I'm just thinking out loud, to go to the manager, and the manager go, oh my gosh, look at this. That's how it works? Why are you guys even here? You've already figured this out. That's great. That's fantastic. But you can see at United, they get an email that says, this person liked you. Who cares? It's really sad. Okay, did I have you write things down on this category yet, or did I skip over that? Okay, write something down. Write down here, that employee, who and how is their job relevant? For whom and how is their job relevant? Write that down. Write that down. Anybody have any thought about the challenge of this one? Anybody struggling? But you have a great answer, a breakthrough, totally puzzled, indifferent. Indifferent? No, you're going to share? Oh, stand up and share with us.
That guy we were talking about in hospital IT. Right? At Enloe, we have this concept that everybody is a caregiver.
Right.
Right? And so that applies in IT, and we have opportunities to remind our team members at all times. My team is responsible for all of the parts of the computer system that are not patient care specific. So the billing and the scheduling and these things. And so that makes it a little bit harder to put the relevance out there for the team to remind them, because everybody's about patient safety,
Right.
and about the patient care. But we have to remind ourselves all the time that by maintaining the support tools that the nurses and the doctors are using, that when it's your mom in that hospital bed, the nurse won't be so upset about the computer not working that she won't be able to take care of your mom.
So that's great. I love that you've connected it to the patient. And that seems like the right thing to do, and it's great. But don't forget, it's fine that that person comes in and is thinking about the nurse. You know what I mean? And because they know that the nurse then serves the patient. But sometimes if we're trying to get too much to the ideal, we skip over that level. It's like your job, your patients are your nurses. And you know whose life you're changing? The nurses' kids. Because that system allows them to go to their recital and change schedules when they have to. Or, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes in the pursuit of the ideal, connecting it always to patients, we skip over the fact that maybe there's actually somebody else. You know, and the answer is both, but in their case, it's probably the nurse. Make sense? There was another person who raised their hand over here. Yes?
When you're talking about irrelevance, I mean, we work for the hospital. I gotta take care of the facilities.
Oh, you do facilities at the hospital?
We do.
Beautiful.
So when you're looking at it, do I really need to tell my guys? Now, the reason you're fixing that ice machine is so that everybody can have water in the hospital and ice. I mean, isn't this relatively straightforward, at least in some fields?
I love this. I thank you so much for being such a smart ass. I mean, a thoughtful. That's a great question. That's a great question, and then one for her too. Here's the deal. I'm gonna answer this succinctly. Yes. But the thing is, you're right. If you do it like, hey, it's demeaning. It's like, I know, but it's like, hey, you know something, Bob? I know you're fixing, doing all this stuff right here, and you know why you do it. But you know something? It's worth saying this. There are people that work in hospitals where this stuff breaks down, and that just lowers the bar of expectations for excellence, and that translates to other things. And so I realize nobody's going to come around and go, Bob, let's carry him out of the hospital. The ice machines work. But your job is to help him realize that this actually does matter to those people, and help them understand. And your job is probably to orchestrate naturally, not in some corny way, to orchestrate a little bit of that appreciation from the people to do it. So could you guys just please, and maybe it's like whatever they work on, I would just like you to connect that thing that he or she works on and how it affects the patient. Because maybe, like on the ice thing, we're just going on that. Maybe it's like, do you know what it's like there's patients who can't drink, and we have to give them, and when we go down there and it's not there, it is horrible. And their families are, you know what I mean? Things like that. I'm using it as an example. I think our jobs as leaders is to help our people get really excited when they go home at night to say, what I do matters. Because, when they say, what did your dad do? I wish I could remember this story. Somebody we know went to their kids' class and, I fix ice makers. It's like, no, I actually support the nurses at the hospital to make sure their equipment is available so they can serve patients. Those are different answers. When I was a little kid, I wanted my dad to have the second answer because it's true. And if he says, I don't know, I fix ice machines, that's a tragedy. So, great question. Thank you for saying that. And that's that thing we can kind of feel embarrassed. If we do it hokey and silly, put yourself in their position. Okay, last thing. What about immeasurement, the one I'm terrible at? Okay. Yes, question, I love it. Oh, it's not a question? You don't get a book unless you ask it. It's like Jeopardy. What is this, Alex?
When I had both of my kids at Enloe, I really appreciated when they had ice.
Oh! Praise God. And you're going to go tell that story. Or maybe you don't need to. It's probably a waste of time. Thank you. That is so, yeah. What's that? Oh, yeah, she can have a book. Absolutely. The biggest book. Okay. So write this down. How do I help my people measure theirs? Take that employee and say, do they have a way to know, to assess for themselves if they're succeeding and doing a good job? Okay, any questions about measurement? How many people have a good story? We're getting close to the end and I want to get you out of here on time. Unlike Professor up there who keeps moving all the time. Thank you, Professor, for bringing your students. Where's the professor?
Here!
All right, what a professor. Oh, yeah.
I've actually lost quite a few of them already, though.
There you go. They had other classes to go. Yeah, okay. Anybody else have questions about measurement? Anybody have a breakthrough or somebody back there is raising their hand? Share it.
What I did was I created core values for the people that I work with. So I closed a transaction with a lender who had never met with a first-time home buyer. I went to that lender and I said, this isn't acceptable because when you purchase a home with me, I want it to be an experience, not a transaction. So I was able to give that lender my core values, and now every time I work with that lender, we meet with the buyer at signing. We go to every one of the closings, every housewarming party is hosted by myself and the lender. So being able to, in that lender's mind originally, the measurement was, I got a paycheck, but my measurement was to make it an experience for the home buyer.
I love that because it wasn't a metric. It was qualitative. All of life is qualitative, people. There's quantitative things that help inform the qualitative, but it's all qualitative, okay? My son at the end of my life is not going to say, Dad, you were a 8.4. There's going to be things he can measure. Hopefully I'm getting better than that. Okay, we don't have a lot of time, so I want to lead you to is this. Okay, the last thing I want to do is, I want to say this. Everyone says, one day I'm going to retire, and I'm going to go do really good things. I'm going to go read to kids, or I'm going to, and before I do this, let me end with some practical stuff. Next week, you're all going to be getting an email from us about the website you can go to get more of these forms. Okay? Here's what I want you to do. I want everybody to agree to a couple things here. First, I want you to go back to your place of work and tell your 454 employees just tell them, I went to this thing, I learned some things. Next week, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about what I learned, because I really want to take you through this. Okay, some of them are here, some of them aren't, but I want you to let people know that something's coming. Okay? Then I want you to go through and do this for your people. Very simple stuff. You don't have to have it perfect, because you're going to sit down and talk to them about it. They're going to fill out half of this for you. You're going to say, I really want to get to know you more. Or I really want to help you figure out what's relevant. I really want to give you a sense of measurement. And they're going to fill in those blanks with you. So it's an interactive process. It's not like I fill this out, email it to them, they're good. You know? So I want you to tell them that you went to this and that something's coming, a good thing. I want you to work on it. And then I want you in the next 2 weeks to sit down with all of your people for 10 to 15 minutes and just have the conversation about each of these things. Just 5 minutes in each area. And just let them know this is the way you're going to do this in the future. Because if the people in this room decide to do this, and it doesn't have to be the same, it doesn't have to be perfect, we're not making the perfect the enemy of the good, but if you agree that you're going to know your people, you're going to help them with their relevance, and you're going to follow up with them, honestly, something crazy is going to happen in this area. Even crazier than it's already happening. Okay? That's why we did this. We really want the world to go. If you want to know how to build a community where people love their work and love one another, you're going to go to Chico and you're going to learn from them. And this is the first time we want to do this. We want to do it all over the world, but this is the first place, and we're really excited for that. Now let me end by this. Executives often come to me and say, I want to retire early someday so I can go do important work. I want to go volunteer to teach kids how to read or to do missionary work and to do all that, which is fabulous, which is totally wonderful. A lot of people come to church and say, now I'm older, I'm retired, I want to do something. That's great. But like my friend Cody over here said, he became a youth pastor, which, I love the people who work in churches, and he goes, I wanted to change kids' lives. And what he said is, then I realized I probably should have been a teacher, because I was with them 2 hours a week. Teachers are with them 8 hours a day, or 5 hours a day. If you're waiting until you retire to change people's lives, realize this, if you're managing somebody, you're a missionary. It is a ministry. You are profoundly impacting them, their self-esteem, their spouse, their children, their friends, the people they ride on the bus with, their neighbors. Please do not wait until you're retired to do the most important work, which is loving other people and changing their lives. You can start that now, and I really pray that this takes hold and that it serves you and the people that you manage. Thank you so much for having me here. God bless you all.